Hello, my name is Elise, or Caffeine and Misery, and today I'm going to be talking about one of the decks that got some brand new updates out of DZ-BT-14 on Wizards of the Crimson Moon, that being the Fated 1/0 Blangdmire. So Blangmire got an incredible new singular piece of support with his Mythic, and we'll just go ahead and go through the list, kind of talk about my choices with how I've specifically chosen to do this list. And without further ado, let's get started. Of course, starting with Cavity Maligula and Holoraptor, who, when Holoraptor is rode upon by Vacant Fang, you get to reveal the top 3 cards of your deck, put all grade 1 on graders in Soul, and then you bottom deck the rest. And as long as at least 2 cards go to Soul, you draw a card. Vacant Fang has a similar skill when rode upon by a grade 3 Blangmire. You get to check the top 3 cards of your deck. Again, shove all grade 1 or graders into Soul, but then you'll shuffle the deck. And if you put at least 2 cards, you'll draw a card. And lastly, for the ride line, we've got the original man himself, the Fated 1/0 Blangmire, who, on attack, by binding 2 or more cards, up to 4 from your Soul face down, you get to draw a card, and if you bound 4 cards, your opponent will bind 2 of their rear guards face down, and Blangmire will gain an extra 5k for every 2 cards in your bind zone. Other than that, his divine skill is that at the beginning of the guard step, so that would be before your opponent puts down any cards to guard. But after when this unit is attacked, or when unit is attack skills, so keep that in mind. But at the beginning of guard step, as long as you have 8 or more cards bound face down in your bind zone, you can have Blangmire gain a critical, and if you do, your opponent cannot play or call sentinels for the rest of the turn, and you'll pick one of your opponent's vanguards until the end of the opponent's next turn. Both your opponent and their vanguard loses all skills they have. All skills are nullified. That does include the twin drive icon and the triple drive icon if it's like a grade 4. Moving into the main deck, we've got, of course, 4 copies of his upgrade. One who walks from 0, Blangmire Nexus, who has the continuous on Vanguard Circle that he is always treated as Fated 1/0 Blangmire, and as long as you have a card with the same name as this card, so the original Blangmire or other copies of Nexus, he'll gain all of their divine skills, and your front row rear guards will get an additional 5k. Along with that, as an act ability, you can bind 4 cards from Soul face down, or a card with the same name as this Vanguard as an alternate cost. Your opponent will bind 2 of their units face down. Blangmire will gain 5k for every 2 cards in your bind zone, and you'll get to pick a face down card in your bind zone that's grade 3 or lower, call it to rearguard circle, and if you don't call, you get to draw a card. So he lets you kind of take some of those resources you've used to build up your bind zone and bring them back. I'm also still on 4 copies of Single Strike Shatter Colossus. I'm on this because it helps you kind of accelerate building up your bind zone. Because when he attacks, as long as your bind zone has 4 more cards face down, you can have him get an extra 10k till end of battle. And if you do, at the end of the battle, you put him to Soul. Along with that, when he's put into Soul by a card's ability, as long as you have a grade 3 or greater Blangmire Vanguard, you get to bind him face down to draw a card. So he ups your bind count a little bit faster and gets you a bit of card draw. And rounding out the grade 3s, I have my Regalis piece of choice for this deck, Shroud in Darkness, which, as long as you didn't ride from the ride deck this turn, you can play it for free. But it also has a pretty low cost of a single counterblast to choose up to 2 non-sentinel normal units with different names and drop and grades less than or equal to your Vanguard and call them. And as long as you call 1 or less, you don't do the full 2, you get to shove this into Soul also. So this can recur any of your units, build up Souls so that you have the cost for Nexus or just regular Blangmire if you missed a ride. And it has a low cost, so if you're in a particularly bad state, 1 counterblast isn't going to be the end of the world. Moving on to our grade 2s, I'm on 3 copies of Steam Raiders Amug, the original support unit for Blangmire, who, when placed on rare, as long as you have a grade 3 or greater Blangmire, first thing on counterblast, you'll reveal the top 3 cards of your deck. Pick any number of them, so all grade 1 graders aren't being forced in, all grade 1 graders aren't forced in, unlike the ride line. And then you'll shuffle up the deck, and as long as you put at least 1 card, you get the option to draw a card. Along with that, as long as you have a grade 3 or greater Blangmire and this unit's critical is 1 or less, for 3 energy, you can give him an additional 5k in crit. So this is a 2 crit beater for 3 energy. Along with that, I'm also on 4 copies of, if it'll focus, there we go. I'm on 4 copies of Vadrock Dragon, who, on place, as long as it's not placed on rearguard circle during the battle phase, you still charge 1, then you can counterblast 1 to pick a grade 2 or lower card with a different card name from Soul and call it. But if you have a Vanguard that isn't Blangmire at the end of the turn, it'll go back into Soul. So you can get a body out on your grade 2 turn from Soul, get an extra attack, it'll go back in. And during your turn, he'll get plus 10k for every 4 cards in your bind zone face down. So he goes up at the same rate as Blangmire, but at higher intervals. So every 4 is still 10k, but he's getting it every 4 instead of every 2. Continuing on through our grade 2s, I'm on 3 copies of Crying Crow's Vartak, which, as long as you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Blangmire, and your bind zone has 4 more face down cards, it'll get these 3 following continuous abilities. 1, it cannot be chosen by your opponent's card effects. 2, it gets boost. And 3, it is a 15k beater / booster and a 10k interceptor. I'm mainly running him because he's just a very solid other option to build up big columns, because 15k booster is nothing to sneeze at. He can't be removed by opponents' abilities or even chosen, so things like prison, anything that retires, he's just going to be able to survive and be that 10k interceptor. Rounding out our grade 2 cards, though, we have the brand new Mythic of 0, Gravardi, who, first off, has the continuous ability that he is also a Keter Sanctuary unit. And this is so that you have the option to play it in Blank Phantom too, which is cute. Along with that, as long as you have a grade 3 or greater Blangmire, it gets 3 auto abilities. The first being from Solar Drop, that at the beginning of main phase, as long as you don't have a copy of Gravardi out, you get to call him to rearguard circle. And if you call a card, if you call him at the end of the turn, you'll bottom deck him. Along with that, at the beginning of the battle phase, until the end of the turn, he'll gain 5k. Then you get to pick one of your rear guards and give it boost. So you can either pick, the most common picks are either going to be himself or Vadrock Dragon to give yourself a 20, 30, 40k booster sometimes. And lastly, at the end of the battle, your rear guard attacks. As long as you've used a divine skill this game, and you did not restand any other units this battle phase, for 3 energy, you get to restand the whole column that he's in. So he's another way to get a 4th attack. He does conflict with Zamug a little bit, so that's why he's only at 3, and Zamug's only at 3. But it gives you more options for your multi-attack if you want to conserve your counterblast or use them elsewhere. And moving on to our grade 1s, and one of the big reasons you may want to use your counterblast elsewhere, we're on 3 copies of Elaborate Wizard, who, when placed from hand, you get to check the top 2 cards of your deck, put 1 to Soul, and bottom deck the other. And at the end of the battle, you boost, as long as you have a grade 3 or greater Blangmire Vanguard. For a single counterblast, you get to take a card from Soul, a normal unit, put it into hand, and then you'll bind him face down. So he accelerates your bind zone count 2, and if you happen to soul charge a Sentinel off of like your ride line or randomly off Vadrock, you can add it back to hand. Same with your Nexuses. Continuing through grade 1s, we are still on 3 copies of Evoke Alchemist, who during the battle of boost, as long as you have a grade 3 or greater Blangmire Vanguard, it gets +5. And when he boosts a grade 3 or greater Blangmire Vanguard, he gets +2. Then, as long as you have 4 more cards face down in your bind zone, you can counterblast 1 and restand one of your rear guards. And if your bind zone has 8 or more face down cards, the unit that's restood will gain an extra 15. So like I said, we're doing kind of a mix of your options on restanding here, because sometimes you're going to want to put more pressure on with the criticals from Zamug, especially in your Divine Skill turn. So in those situations, Evoke Alchemist is a little bit better. but there are definitely a lot of options a lot of times where you want to use the energy for Gravardi. Also, so the deck has a bit more versatility in its force wings. I'm also on 2 copies of Netherworld Butcher, which, when placed on rare, as long as you have a grade 3 or greater Blangmire, your opponent's intercepts are disabled. They can't intercept for the rest of the turn. And when he boosts, as long as you have a grade 3 or greater Blangmire Vanguard, you get to pick a card from drop and put it into Soul. Netherworld Butcher lets you turn your single strikes here into free discards because they'll just go in, bind themselves, and draw you a card, because that is an effect that binds them. Rounding out our grade 1 cards, we're on 4 Sentinels, including the Sanctitude. Going into the trigger lineup, we are on 8 critical triggers. I'm not using the soul crits in this list. You have very often you just don't have the slots to use them, so even if they do come up, you just don't have the space. I'm also on 3 shield fronts, so 20k card fronts. You can definitely get away with dropping the crits down to 7 and running 4. I've honestly been considering running an 8 front build of this because Zamug has the extra critical. Blangmire's Divine Skill will give an extra crit for that, and the columns you make are already really big. Making them even bigger, forcing another 1 or 2 cards out of your opponent's hand every time, is pretty good. Anyways, 4 heal triggers. And lastly, my OT of choice for Blangmire right now is the Spiritual King of Tempest Storm, Vylerm. Vylerm is a really interesting one because its additional effect when drove check is that you pick one of your attacking units and give it an extra crit and drive for the turn. Blangmire Nexus has always kind of felt like, for whatever reason, it needed a 3rd drive check to me. So Vylerm kind of does that. You can definitely make a lot of use out of Walnut, especially in the early game with Zamug, or Ito's Faro for some recursion. Going into some of the pros and cons, one of the biggest things is you have so many resources you are okay getting rid of early game with this deck. Gravardi revives itself from drop. These can be put into Soul as long as you see a Netherworld Butcher, which, with how much you draw through the deck, you likely will. And you can build up a lot of resources in defense just fine. Along with that, because of Zamu here, you're actually fine to hold a crit or 2 in your opening hand if you think your matchup is going to really need the extra guard value, the extra protection. However, the cons of the deck are still the same. And the biggest one being, you do kind of need to see Nexus for your follow-up turns 4 onwards to have pressure. You can still get pretty good with Vaidrock being like a 20, 30, sometimes 40k booster off of Gravardi's skill. And you can get the 4 attacks pretty consistently as long as you see either one of these 6 copies. But missing out on some of the removal and some of the power from not having Nexus can really hurt, especially since Nexus removes the opponent's units during the main phase, so they may ditch some of their interceptors early. But this is my Blangmire list going forward post set 16 or set 14, my bad. If you guys like the list, you like the video, you like just listening to me do all the YouTube stuff, please like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see y'all next time. Ciao.